Yes, recording. This is Tuesday, November 12th, 2019. This is Garden Web's MELS 601 add-on. This is week 12, and we are so glad that you are with us. So glad that Dr. Crawford and his folks are with us, and that maybe some of Dr. Shepard's people are with us. We're not 100% sure. Before I forget to say this, at the end, we do not have a Zoom class next week. Next week is reserved for you to be able to catch up on your work and get moving with that. So just wanted to say that before I forget at the end. Dr. Crawford, you have anything to add to that?
Nope. Most of my folks are right where they need to be, and done a really good job so far. It's moving faster because you're not making a lot of the same mistakes. So you got a whole week coming up. You can really just dig in and either catch up or work ahead. Especially
Right.
given that we're about a week away from having to buy turkeys to thaw them out to thaw them out in the refrigerator. So
That's right. And 6 weeks away from Christmas as of tomorrow.
stop.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
Walmart already has a whole section up. It's like, really?
I'm not surprised. All right, so let's look at week 12. So this Sunday night on 11/17, you have your case study scenario 2 that's due with your group. You can go in your case study directives under case study materials on the main menu in Blackboard to find your directives for that. Your APTEL Task 2 revisions will be due for your grade. And then task 3 is due to the discussion board by this Sunday night. Here are some extra resources for you that are available there that you can access as well. And then we have some other resources down here that we will go over tonight while we're together later on. And then just looking ahead to week 13. Now remember, we will not be meeting next week, but to just look ahead to week 13, that week your APTEL Task 3 revisions would be due in the assignment Dropbox. Your Task 3 peer reviews are due, and then your Task 4 is going to be due, and that's going to be the last of the 9 of the 21 competencies that you didn't do the first time. And if you'll remember, some of you followed that template and accidentally did 2 technologies. So you'll need to do 10 if you did 2 of those the first time. And please remember that your competency folio does need to be up and going and have all that in there as well. If you have any questions about that, please do not hesitate to ask. I know of my coaching students, which is none of you, some of them still don't have that up and going. So, and if you have not published and shared that, then nobody's going to be able to see it and you're not going to be able to work in it. So, but next week, week 13, is for you to effectively and efficiently use this week to catch up on your work and get finished with all of your assignments for the work. If you all don't mind, I would love to talk just a minute about Task 2. Remember that in Task 2, that you're going to describe your data collection strategies and the criteria that you use to identify the gap. So in these 5 areas that you already did research on last week in Task 1, then in Task 2, you want to include in there the research, so what's supposed to happen, the survey information, this is what my teachers perceive, this is what my teachers think is happening, and then include your observation checklist. Some of my folks have been leaving that part out of there because just because the teachers think something is happening, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what's really going on and is observable. You can include things that your administrator has provided information in there. And then please, please don't forget to include your PLC in sharing this information and helping determine those gaps that do belong there. And if you really think that, let's just say in building efficacy and empowerment, that everything's great and that everything that you're doing is aligning with research, then that's great. Look at that and see that, but I would argue with you that that's when you have the opportunity to move from good to great. So if you think you're already good somewhere, then think about, okay, this is what we're doing and we're really good at this. And what can we do 1% better to make this great? One other thing that I would want to mention that I think some of my folks have forgotten is that because now you're in that back in that phase of like putting 90% of the staff agreed with, you know, whatever. Remember, you cannot start a sentence with a numeral. If you're going to start your sentence with 90%, you have to spell that out, NINETYPERCENT. So just remember that part. That's just been a lot of repeats of things that I've been making comments on with my folks with this task 2. Dr. Crawford, what about you?
No, I would just say that when you're doing that particular task, you want to make sure that, because you're basically what you are comparing is what the research says versus what you have found. So no, you don't have to list every single item out there, but you might want to find 2 or 3, or even if you just said research according to Whitaker found this. In conducting research at X school, it was found X, Y, and Z. So you want to make sure that you make that juxtaposition clear. Dr. Hamilton, Jonathan had a question in the chat. Can you talk briefly about what and where the dispositions are?
We're going back to week 12 or 13. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, just the dispositions. So like they've got to come up with the last 9 or 10. So what exactly are they? How do we best describe them?
Yes, that correlates with the 21 competencies that are in your competency folio. And so that's going to be task 4 in the APTEL. So if you'll remember that in the APSEL, your task 5 was to do 12 of those. And so in the APTEL, the one we're doing now, your task 4 is that you will reflect on the APTEL experience by analyzing their development as a leader and applying course content to the clinical experiences in the candidate's narrative and relating the course experiences to these. So you are to complete the 9 competencies that you did not do for the APSEL. So between the APSEL and the APTEL, you will have 1 entry in your competency folio which is in task stream, that you have created. You will have 1 entry for all 21 in your competency folio.
And by entry, she means evidence.
I think this was something different. Dr. Stedman sent me an email saying that I needed to complete my School of Ed dispositions.
Oh, the School of Ed, no. Yes. That's also in task stream. Yes,
yeah,
sorry.
Your School of Ed task stream, but I just wasn't sure if that was like a self-analysis or...
Yes. And you can do that at any time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was when Dr. Lamb talked about that at the very beginning. He said you can mark yourself. I don't remember what the top mark is, but like...
accomplished or something like that, or distinguished.
Yeah. He said you can mark yourself like that, but you need to have some evidence as to why you did mark yourself in that area for that. But yes, that was, yes. Sorry. Yes, thank you for clearing that up. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I hadn't been thinking about those lately, so that didn't come right back to mind. So let's just go back to that. So let's just go back. I don't know how many people were on Thursday night at the coaching session. But task 3, remember that task 3 is a staff development plan for your school. You're trying to help teachers be the very best they can be, because the better they can be, the better student and learning in your school is. And that's what we're there for, is for children to learn. So you're going to take all the stuff you've done in task 1 and task 2, and you're going to tailor a plan for your school. And it's designed based on the amount of teachers using the best practices in your school, and how you're going to support them. And remember not to work in a silo by yourself, but to bring in your PLC, bring in your administrator, work together with these folks, bring in your school improvement team. So you're going to have to complete an analytical narrative for each of these 10 items that are highlighted in yellow right here, and put them into your growth plan. So you'll have these 10 items that you're going to narratively discuss. And then once you've done that, you're going to put that down in this graphic organizer down here, which is similar to the one that you did in the APSL. So a vision for a positive school environment. It's a positive environment of teaching and learning. It's a place where teachers want to take leadership. It's a place where people want to learn. It's a place where learning is valued, and a place where teachers want to learn and grow, and teachers want to work collaboratively. Dr. Crawford, just jump in if you think of something to say about each of these.
No, this is where, as you're looking for, as you're looking at completing this staff development plan, get into the mindset that it really needs to be rooted in data. And so, if you found that on a staff of 30, only 5 teachers are using non-linguistic representations for whatever. That gives you the basis to include that in your staff's development plan. Also, you can include, some of this may be dictated by the context of your school. So, for instance, if you are working with a very new staff, that might be something that you might want to address, because if you have a staff of, say, 50, and of those 50, 35 are BT 1, 2s, and 3s, you're going to have a very, very, very different staff development approach than Dr. Hamilton would with a much more experienced staff in a high-performing school. So remember that context in this matter counts as well.
And that's that second one, everything he just said, that documentation to support identified needs, all those pieces of data that support that. 60% of our teachers are BTs. The data from your checklist when you went around and observed, the data from anything that you have that you've collected from your surveys, from anything. One thing when you're observing, whatever kind of staff development you've had in your school, one thing you can look and see is what we've learned in our staff development being implemented in the classrooms. And if so, to what degree? To what % of teachers are implementing that what we have learned. I think Dr. Lamb said the other night, the strategic indicators of success ultimately is student achievement. Short and long-term goals. Your short-term goals being getting teachers to use more best practices. Your long-term goals ultimately is to increase your faculty capacity so that your student learning is increased. Activities. So what is this staff development going to look like? What's it going to look like as a whole group presentation? Because you can staff develop and people can even get good at it. But then over a summer or a break, sometimes they need a little reminder, or sometimes those observations help with going in and looking and helping them understand nuances that perhaps they didn't understand before.
And as all of you know, or if you have experienced it, I'm sure that you will. When it comes to staff development, sometimes your biggest enemy is actually your district. They'll come in and this is what we're all going to do, and here's all the stuff, and then you work it for a year, and then you circle back around, and the next year there's a new chief academic officer or a new somebody somewhere or something or other, and now you're doing something else. Guilford County, well, a lot of large districts are notorious for this. Even at the elementary level here in Guilford, we were all in hard for 2 straight years on foundations, which I actually bought into. It was easy for me to learn, especially with a high school background. It was easy to follow. It was easy for me to supervise. I knew what teachers, when teachers were doing it well, I knew when they were struggling, I could offer feedback and get coaching for those folks. We did it for just 2 years. Anybody knows it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 to really implement something well, but we went away from that and now we're doing something completely different. And we're still left with a building full of foundation stuff. So sometimes when it comes to professional development, your district will be or can be your biggest enemy. And there's not much you can do about it but shake your head, readjust, and plow forward.
As Dr. Lamb said, a solution looking for a problem. That's not what we want. We want to identify our problems and find an appropriate solution. And one solution is not going to ever be a blanket fix to all problems. And then on down here, specific roles and responsibilities, stakeholder buy-in, all those things. That's why you still need your PLC involved. And remember that just like in the app cell, formative means the adults and summative means the children. So formative, how are you going to monitor what the adults are doing? And summative, what is the student outcome? What's that student data that's going to help you know that you have reached what you want? So formative adults, summative students. So don't miss that part on that. Anything about task 3? Are y'all good with that? And then task 4, again, is the last 9 of the competencies that you did not do in the APSL, unless you did 2 technologies in the APSL. And if you did, then you have to go back and do the 10 that you didn't do here. The template was created that way, so that's what threw some of that stuff off. And then that's the end of your APTEL. And then you'll get all that in, and then that's the end of you're a third of the way through. That's how fast it goes.
So hang in there, almost over.
Yes, hang in there. You're getting there. Let's go back to week 12. So we just want to talk a little tonight about the North Carolina Professional Teaching Standards. I know some of you are in South Carolina, but just sort of an overview. So when you're observing and as an administrator and everything, you really have to know what's expected of teachers, what are teachers expected to know and be able to do, because you can't go in there and you can't observe and you can't give feedback and you can't help them grow if you don't know what it is that they're being evaluated on and what they're expected to do. So last time, I'll pull this up right quick. Well, that's for principals. But last time, I had made this little chart. So in North Carolina, teachers have 5 standards: demonstrating leadership, establishing a respectful environment, knowing the content they teach, facilitating learning for students, and reflecting on their practice. And South Carolina, unless I'm mistaken, and please speak up, I saw 4 areas in South Carolina, and I just sort of tried to align them from what I read, and this was back in the spring that I did this, but from what I read, I tried to align them like professionalship, sort of aligned with leadership and practice, environment, planning, and instruction. So they sort of align and support each other and sort of along the same lines, which it makes sense that they would be, because good teaching is good teaching, and what's good things to be expected for students should be expected regardless of the state that you're in. So in standard 1, this is leadership. So when you're talking about leadership and you're thinking about your APTEL and you're giving your PLC those leadership opportunities, And remember, we talked about the opportunity to be a leader in the classroom and to be a leader in the school and to be a leader through professional development. So these are all things that you can think about, and this is available to you when you're working through your APTEL and you're thinking about how to assign teachers and how to build efficacy and capacity in your teachers, is to look at these leadership opportunities. Dr. Crawford, you got something about that?
Well, this is also why it's extremely important as you start, and this is one of the things that both Dr. Lamb and Dr. Stedman stress as you're going through this process. You have to make that mental flip in your own head from thinking about this from the standpoint of the teacher sitting in the library at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the staff meeting, kind of like this, to the person being in front of the library leading teachers. So you're going to have to start making that mental switch in your head and looking at this from the standpoint of an administrator. That's why when we talked about when you were doing your, talking with your principal about doing your observations in classrooms, that we stressed, if at all possible, do a couple with the principal or an assistant principal to calibrate, because you're going to have to align your thinking with ultimately what the principal thinks. So whether it's me, if you were with me, you would align one way. If you were Dr. Hamilton or Dr. Shepard, you would align someplace else, in a different way. It's because we're in different buildings, we have different priorities, and therefore we look for different things. Although Dr. Hamilton and I'm pretty sure could probably walk into a school that wasn't either one of ours, do an observation, and probably come up largely aligned on what we see, only because we've been doing it as long as we have. So calibrating your thinking around what does, at the very least, proficient and look like in each of these standards. Now, folks, and I think I've mentioned this before, one thing is clear: when we switched over from the TPAIR, ooh, Dr. Hamilton, that took me back a minute. When we switched over
TPAIR.
from the TPAIR
Materials
to,
ready.
right, standard 3, baby, there you go. We switched over from the TPAIR to this particular document. It was really set up so that proficient was supposed to be fairly difficult to get. And yet, when you look across the state, and I posted, I think it may have been in week 9 or week 10, I actually posted a study that was done in North Carolina, even though it was 7 years old. I don't know if the data has changed very much. You will find that statewide, like 95, 96, 97% of teachers across the state are rated as accomplished or better in standards 3 or 4. So the issue there is, well, that's fine. We have all these above average teachers. So then, why do test scores look the way they do? Why are third grade reading scores been as flat as they are? Why do we have a persistent disparity gap between students of color and white students across the state? So that's a case where, the data is matching, in many cases, what we say teachers are doing. Now, that can also work the other way. I think a student asked me, what about teachers where the EVOS data is great, but they're not rated that way? And you know what? That is a fair issue that we have to address as well. So really getting an understanding of what it means to demonstrate leadership in the classroom. What does an environment that is safe and clean look like? What does what does teachers knowing the content they teach look like? And everyone in the building at an administrative level, and I would even say some of the para-administrators, like in a high school, your department chairs, in elementary and middle school, your curriculum facilitators or whatever have you, need to be able to be able to speak that same language so that we know exactly where our trouble spots are and how to address them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and notice right here it says that in leaders, they strive to improve their profession and they promote professional growth. So when you're thinking about creating your action plan for your school, those folks on your PLC, this is their opportunity to promote professional growth and to strive to improve the profession, the school, the children's learning. So this is their opportunity to demonstrate that leadership in the building. And now that the teachers in North Carolina no longer get teacher tenure, our district is now on a 1, 2, or 4-year contract. I don't know how y'all are doing it in Guilford, but
Same way.
okay, well, there are in our district, there are a certain number of years associated with, but once you have enough years in that you can be recommended for a 4-year, when the principal recommends you for a 4-year contract, we have to tell how this person is demonstrating leadership in the building. And you can't just say it was my turn to be the grade level chair.
And in Guilford County, for that 4-year contract, you have to have at least 1 year in the previous 3 with an accomplished rating in standards 3 or 4.
Same for us. So we have to have 2 accomplished in 2 different standards. And if you're just on an abbreviated 1 and 4, you have to have it in both of that.
Right.
Then standard 2, a respectful environment. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, again, the question is, what does it look like? See, I don't know if Dr. Hamilton does, but for me, that goes beyond not only how teachers treat students, but when you walk into a classroom, how do students treat each other? For me, my teachers will tell you they'll know when I'm starting to get antsy, when I'll start saying "do it, delegate it, dump it." That's my signal to them that classrooms are beginning to get cluttered. And so this is the time of year where that's beginning to happen. So it's time to clean up. And many of my kids come from very, very chaotic environments. They don't need to come to school and have that same type of environment. So again, what does that look like? Do you work with these specialists in your building, or do you complain, that teacher's always pulling my kids? Well, that kid has an IQ of 50. They need some extra help. And the time doesn't always work. So are they working with the specialists in the building? So these are all the things that you look at.
And then in North Carolina, standard 3 is knowing the content they teach. And this part includes that in their lesson plans, they have to have the standard course of study listed. So I have never been, unless need be, I've never been a principal that says you have to turn in your lesson plans to me every week. But we use an electronic base at my school called Plan Book. So I can carry around my iPad and I can walk into anyone's classroom at any given time, log into Plan Book, and I can see what they have planned, and I can see if what they're doing is what they have planned and if that's congruent with the standards. And if you don't know the standards, then you're not going to know if what they're doing is right or not. And it's important to know the standards because the standards change. And people will do what they've always done just because that's what they've always done. And so if you're not careful, things will be happening that's not even supposed to be happening yet. And but you have to know that. And it's not that they're intentionally doing something wrong. It's just what they've always done, and they don't always go back and check and make sure that maybe things have changed.
And so this, for me, is where differentiation comes in. I have a second grade teacher that I hired, and her first day was open house. So she walked into the door playing catch up. When I'm looking at lesson plans, if they're not right, that's not on her. That's on me and my administrator staff because we didn't, offer her. We didn't give her the level of support that she needed. Unfortunately, that has been an issue. She works hard and she wants to do well, versus say a Robin Hamilton that may have been teaching for 16 years. Yeah, there's for me with her going to be, you're at a point where you should know better. So I'm going to hold you accountable. So differentiating that within the staff is also something that you want to take a look at.
And then I would say standard 4, this is where you can really look at for those best practices and see if you are seeing those best practices every day in the classroom. The thinking, the critical thinking, the integration of effective technology, allowing children to problem solve. Really, how is that learning being facilitated for the children?
You know, can you see it from, and so one of the things that I always tell my teachers, for me, technology isn't you turning on a smartboard. And you've got many principals that will give that proficient that one if they turn on a smartboard. To me, technology is what students are doing with technology. So, you know, I had a teacher a couple of years ago who actually had kids use Voki to do the election of the class animal president. She did it in concert with an off-year election, and so it was great. So she had the kids create their Vokis, create their speeches through Voki. It was a great assignment. That to me is an example of, in that particular element of that rating, that's an accomplished because it's what kids are doing with technology.
And then the last standard for North Carolina, and it sort of goes back to the professionalism for South Carolina, is being a reflective practitioner. And really analyzing, thinking critically about what needs to be done to improve learning, that when you do have professional development opportunities, that you are coming back and implementing those with the intended intent. I don't mean to say the same word twice there, but with the right intention, that you're participating in that high quality professional development. One thing that I would offer is that as a school administrator, you need to participate with your staff. And that doesn't mean sitting at the back of the room checking your emails, but really being an active participant. Because if you're not learning and you're not knowing what's expected or what's supposed to be done, then how can you go in and monitor to see if it's being done with fidelity? Or how can you go in and provide help and feedback to people who maybe have misunderstandings and still need assistance with implementation? Because really, you are the coach in the building. You are the person that's going to have to say, I think you have a little misunderstanding about this. Let's work on, try to shore this up. None of us can look at anything once or hear anything once and go back and fully implement it with the intent or with, we can't go be experts at it. So we all need someone to come watch us and say, gosh, I think if you would just do this, tweak this one little thing, that would make this so much more effective. Dr. Crawford?
This is also where you look at your, you know, how do you look at people using their data, whether it's exit tickets from Eureka, whether it's a test they gave and kids either did well or they didn't. You know, an assessment that was delivered, one teacher did well, one teacher did not. And then not only just knowing what the data are, but then, you know, okay, so what are we doing about it? Well, I'm going to tweak this, and I'm going to go back and reteach it this way. And even if they say to me, it's going to put me behind a couple of days, that's fine. We can always find days to make up during, you know, the course of a week or a month if we get a couple of days behind, especially if your intent is to go back and address data that, you know, that was concerning to you. All that falls under 5, and some of that also falls under standard 1 as well.
Correct. So then, as the principal or the assistant principal, in North Carolina, the principal and assistant principal has the same evaluation tool. And in standard 4, that's all about managing your human resources. And in 4C, it talks about evaluating the staff in a fair and equitable manner, focusing on performance and thus student achievement. So it requires you to adhere to the legal observation requirements. It requires you, one thing would be once you've observed someone, you have to have a post-conference within 10 days. And those can really sneak up on you sometimes if you don't watch it.
It's taken me 3 years, and I've really just figured out how to, and 8 cases out of 10, I've gotten to the point now where I can actually write the observation before I leave the classroom.
Well, that's what I've been trying to do, even if I
Yeah.
have to stay in the classroom like 30 minutes after the observation. Now, my daughter's a teacher, and she says that's the worst thing in the world, Mom. Do not do that. But if I can write it and finish it before I walk out of that room, then it's
It makes the
done.
conference easier. Yeah.
It's done. As soon as you walk out of that room, a million things hit you, and then
Yep.
before you know it, and then you don't even remember. I don't even think I do as good of a job writing it up later because so much water has crossed under the bridge at that point that I don't even have a clear remembrance, even though I've scripted everything.
Right.
But I agree, Dr. Crawford, that's the best way to do it. Just work on it while you're sitting there. And even sometimes I have to sit there 20 or 30 more minutes just to finish it up. And I just sit there. And by this point, and you have to remember, I've been in my school for a long time and my teachers have been there a long time. So they know I'm not paying attention to them or listening to anything that's going on at that point. So, so they're used to that. But, you know, if a school's not used to that, then, but I'm in their rooms a couple of times every day too. And if people are not used to that as well, then that also might make people a little uncomfortable until they got used to it. But I agree that that's the best way to do that, is just to go ahead and do it while you're there, and then it's done. Then you're ready. You've given it a good perspective. I think it's more fair that way. And if you have any questions or want to go follow up with anything or look to see if you had any misunderstandings, you're still in the room to be able to do it in that moment. And so I think that's good.
Something else I've learned, and it's a minor thing. But something else I've learned is once you have that post-conference with the teacher, have them come to you with a device. And I say that because this way, once you finish the conference, you can go ahead and you can acknowledge it, the teacher can acknowledge it, and then right then and there, you can go in and lock it. See, it's not, and you're not going to know what this is, but when all the steps are completed, we have to go in and we have to actually lock the observation. And so I freaked out when I got an email a couple of years ago from HR at the end of the first round of observations due, and they were telling me, you know, they were showing me as 0 out of 24 observations being done. I'm like, they're all done. Well, they were done. They just weren't locked. And so they won't show up as complete until it's locked. And again, it's easy to have that conversation. Okay, well, look, when you get back to your classroom, go ahead and sign off on it. Well, just like things pop up on us, things pop up on teachers as well. And you look up and it's been 4 weeks since you have had a post-conference with the teacher and you did it and you were legal, but it's not going to show up as legal because it's going to say you did the observation on the 5th, you did the post-conference on the 7th, and then you didn't lock it until, you know, the next month. So it's those little things that you learn over time that just kind of save you, you know, a headache.
And if I was Dr. Crawford's assistant principal and he didn't lock, I cannot go in and start a new a second or third or fourth observation on that teacher because the first one's not locked.
Correct.
So that's just another, you're exactly right. Just have a device or have them bring a device and just do it all at one time. And that helps. And I don't know what you do about this, Dr. Crawford, but I go ahead and share it with them. So even before I walk out of the room, I share it.
I do.
And then that way they can read it before we even sit down to talk.
Correct. Yeah, that's how I do it.
If they have any questions or concerns, they can bring that up. They're not coming as apprehensive, I don't think, because they already know what it says.
Right. That's how I do it.
And providing formal feedback, it does, one of our requirements for our evaluation, but it does help improve instructional practices when it's done in an effective way. We do have to evaluate teachers in a fair and equitable manner. We have to use multiple assessments to evaluate teachers from. I mean, you can look at their test data, you can look at their EVOS scores, you can look at their walkthrough observations, you can look at their formal evaluations. You can use parent input. There are a lot of things you can use.
And one thing I want to leave you with, and this will garner you, you know, a lot of respect throughout the building. You want to evaluate your you want to evaluate your rock stars with the same level that you would your brand new teachers, because even very good teachers need feedback too.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's very, very, very easy to overlook those folks. Your workhorses, you know who they are. It's very easy to overlook them. And so you want to make sure that they are also getting, listen, every teacher, no matter how good they are, has something they can do, add, tweak, whatever have you. You may have to find it, but it's there. And I think giving them that level of feedback allows them to continue to grow as well.
Right. And I think that when they are that good, that doing that and teasing out those little things, those little nuances, helps them go from great to even greater. And most teachers that are your rock stars really do want to continue to grow and learn. They're not trying to skate or be upset about anything. Most of them really do still want to grow and learn. And then you can also, with your administrative team, take all these observations and look at them holistically. And those are other ways that can help determine what your staff needs for professional development. Whatever it is that you're seeing overall that's not happening. Non-linguistic representations might not be happening in your building. Won't be a surprise if they're not. Then that would be something that you could work on as a whole staff, work on in PLCs, even work on one-on-one with the folks who are maybe struggling a little more, or the ones who are rock stars and doing a great job, providing the opportunity for other people to go observe them and see how they're implementing. And one of the best ways we learn is by watching others do. So it's another good opportunity. Dr. Crawford, do you have anything else about the professional teaching standards?
No, these are just those things that you'll learn over time. And again, one of the first things that you will need to do when you get your first position is you'll want to align your thinking with your principles. Just like when you make that next step to the principalship, you'll have folks that will need to align to yours.
All right. Do we have any questions that we need to answer from the chat?
No, I got just someone's asking about the recording for their presentation. The iPad broke. Would it be okay to use the PowerPoint? If you can re-record it, fine. If not, Chelsea, use the PowerPoint. I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Well, would it hurt anyone's feelings if we finished 12 minutes early? Not mine. Okay. All right. Well, I think, and remember, no Zoom class next week. Next week, you're going to use the rest of this week.
Do we have one Thursday?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If we do, we'll send you an email, but I don't think so.
All right. Obviously,
So use
guys,
this
if you need me,
time.
reach out.
Yes, same. Here's one more question. Oh, yes. Oh, good,
Yeah.
Chelsea. That's great. All right.
And if
All
that
right.
tech guy does you a solid, give him some chocolate.
That's right.
All right, guys, if you need me, reach out. Just keep plugging away.
Ditto. Have a great night.
Stay warm.
Yes. Thank you all. Good
Bye.
night.
Good night.